Better time. Yeah. No.
Hello. I'd like to call this meeting to order. A special meeting Tuesday, April 4th. A public hearing. We'll start with a roll call for attendance, please.
Okay. Commissioner Forster. Here. Bliss.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Petroselli.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tim Meyer.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here.
And Chairperson Montague.
Here, thank you. So we have a public hearing tonight of a sketch plan for the McChesney Minor Subdivision, Lot 2, Zone Residential. R and Future Development FD, applicant Chris Hawkins, DBA Alpine Planning LLC, owner for Winds Ranch LLLP, and the state of Bernardine, Endicott. Before I turn this over to our town planner, TJ, I just like to read this statement to everyone. Members of this planning commission and members of the public are expected to uphold a high standard of civility, professionalism, and decorum in discussions and debate. Open government meetings must allow everyone to be heard without fear of cheers or jeers. Difficult questions, tough challenges to a particular point of view, and criticism of ideas and information are legitimate elements of a free democracy in action. This does not allow, however, anyone to make belligerent, personal, or disparaging comments. Rude behavior will not be tolerated. We take these rules seriously, and we thank you in advance for adhering to these rules of conduct. Does anyone have any questions about that? I will turn this over to TJ.
Okay. Madam Chair, you might just want to go see if there's a conflict of interest of anyone on the board.
Yes. Is there
Can't hear you.
who?
Okay.
Me?
Yeah. Your microphone's not working and his
No, our microphones are working. We just, this is what our system is capable of doing. If you can't hear, please move up closer.
I think it's TJ was the one that we really couldn't hear.
I'll use my outside voice.
Can you hear him now? Everybody can hear him now? You in the back row? Okay.
Is there anyone on the planning commission that would like to recuse themselves?
I would,
If you state your name.
Pam Foister, and I will recuse myself as a resident of the Vista Terrace subdivision.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Preston. Can you let me share, please? There it is. All right, good evening. Madam Chair, Planning Commission, as you mentioned, we have a sketch plan for the Four Winds subdivision. The project is generally located north of and east of Terrace Drive, east of Highway 55, 550. Just real quick, here is the general process that we'll go through. I'm sure many of you have been here before. But we'll start with the staff report. Then we'll move on to the applicant presentation, and then the chair will open it up to public comments. Please keep your comments concise. Don't duplicate. There can be more conversation on that from the chair and the planning commission later on. And then we ask that there's not discussion with the planning commission or other members of the public during that time. Address those comments to the planning commission. Following that, the public comment period will be closed, and the discussion will commence with planning commission, and then they'll move on to motion and vote. That's just the order of the day, and we'll kind of follow through that. So starting with the staff report. So and I'll get into this in a little bit, but just an overview first. That a lot of this information has been presented in public hearings multiple times. So I just want to say for the record, previous presentation staff reports are incorporated into the record. And I'm going to kind of go through a lot of the stuff pretty quick, and I'll just highlight the things that have changed since the last planning commission. So first, the owners are Four Winds Ranch 1 LLP and Bernadine Endicott, the estate. The legal description of the properties, there are two parcels that are part of this request. One is Lot 2 McChesney subdivision, about just over 33 acres, and then a portion of the Endicott property that is just under 10, totaling 43.04 acres for the total request. The zoning is R as well as FD. And again, all the application materials have been submitted as required by the Ridgway Municipal Code, and this public hearing has been notified as required by the code as well. Just a quick overview, we've had multiple meeting dates. The last one being March 28th, which was continued to this evening. And then just a quick overview of multiple rounds of reviews, submittals by the applicant, diligently working with staff to address comments, concerns, then multiple meetings, multiple reviews by CDOT, and then I believe my counting was correct, 3 public hearings. I think this might be the 3rd public hearing with the Planning Commission. So a lot has gone into get us here today. Not much has changed in the overall project summary. Still 20 single-family residential lots. The lot size ranges have slightly changed. And for those who are keen enough, the layout, and we'll talk more about this, the layout that's shown here on the right has altered from what we've referred to as a lollipop roadway design to what we're referring to as a horseshoe a horseshoe roadway design. We're real original with our terminologies around here. But in this configuration, the average lot size has increased to 1.34 acres. I believe it's about 1.16, 1.17 before. So they increased a little bit with this new configuration. Internal roadways with sidewalks, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. It's a crusher fine design there. There's still some subdivision design waivers that are going to be requested. There's still 12.74 acres of open space. There's still a water extension required. OWTS is still being proposed. One change, and we'll get into this a little bit, is that the disturbance area has increased from 10,000 square feet to 15,000 square feet in this latest review. And again, we'll get into some of this in the presentation, and there's a lot more in the staff report. So as I mentioned, there have been multiple iterations of the proposal. I do want to just mention that we're going to just go through a high-level summary and incorporate all of the staff report as well as the findings and analysis of that into the record as well. I need to change my settings here. So not much has changed here. The densities are still the same. Maximum height is still the same. Proposed uses are still the same. Goals and policies, those are still of the master plan. Those are still identified in the staff report. We can go through them if you'd like. And then again, just kind of summarizing some of the previous discussions related to the initial growth boundary. This project is located outside of the initial growth boundary. And what we've established in previous discussions is that being outside does not preclude you from development. It just increases the scrutiny and making sure that things are happening in a methodical way. The impact of the environmental sensitive areas. There were some concerns or comments related to wildlife habitat. Nothing, the concerns of CPW that have been addressed through the review process have been addressed in the proposal, sorry, through a variety of means that were established last time as well, and then the staff. One thing that I wanted to identify is the steep slopes. We've had some conversation previously on them. This specific image is something that CPS created, not the applicants, where we overlaid the design of the subdivision with the steep slopes, so we could understand how they impact. The green are steep slope, are slopes that are between 20 and 30 degrees. The orange are over 7%, and the orange are slopes that are over 30%. Sorry, yeah, 30%. So you can see there are a few building lots that are impacted by it, but not too significant. Moving on to the land use analysis, similarly, again, the current land property is vacant. The densities are not changing necessarily. The average, as I mentioned, did go up on the average lot size to 1.3 acres. Related to accessory dwelling units, this is one element that's shifted a few times through subsequent submittals. And in this latest, they are being proposed again. So if they are to be approved through this process, there are going to be updates to technical reports such as the water, the sewer, traffic to account for the impacts that those additional units would have. And those need to be reflected in preliminary plat submittals. Related to the open space, yes, the 12.74 acres is still being dedicated. However, the mountain bike trail that was previously proposed is being removed. And that's to eliminate the conflict at Highway 550. Visual impact assessment was completed. Additional information was provided in the last submittal package. And those are in the town planning commission's packet. And the applicant will submit design guidelines as they stated in the packet to address some of those visual impacts with the preliminary plat. Additionally, in the latest round, the owner is offering $500,000 donation for affordable housing to be used in Ridgway. Just of note, affordable housing units or fee in lieu of such are not a requirement of the sketch plan or this development. The dimensional standards, not much has changed here. The only real change is in the maximum disturbance area from 10,000 to 15,000 square feet. And we'll talk more about this later on, but there is a staff recommendation or staff recommended condition that disturbance area revert back to 10,000 square feet. The reason that it went up to 15 is to allow additional space for the leach fields for the septic systems. And what we'll get to is that staff is recommending that a condition be added that sewer be proposed in the subsequent submittals. Excuse me. Gosh, I have my window box. There we go. Access for the property is similar, same from Terrace Drive. Excuse me. The Ridgway Municipal Code does require that any new subdivision street system must be connected to at least 2 separate routes, and therefore that's where the recommendation for a year-round secondary emergency access. The application is still proposing a seasonal emergency access easement as shown here in this in the application submittal. So therefore, staff is, we get down to that, you'll see that staff is recommending a condition that a year-round secondary emergency access be provided as an alternative to the single point to meet that code section. Internally, as I mentioned, the road network has changed from a lollipop to a horseshoe, which meets some of the requirements of secondary access, some connections there, as well as ability to loop water system. Other than that, the standards are still, or the design of the roadways are still similar, with a 24-foot wide road within a 60-foot right-of-way. The road standards that are being requested to waive from for this project are still down the road, curb and gutter, and then some others that may come up through further design. So those waivers would be considered in conjunction with the preliminary plat, not necessarily at this time. As mentioned, the road treatment, the code does require paved roads, but gravel roads are being proposed similarly to previous versions. One thing that has changed is the sidewalks and the pedestrian connections that now you can see on the right side of the roadway. There's a 4-foot wide crusher fine sidewalk being proposed through the internal road system. And then related to the 550 access, the applicant and development team has agreed to making the required improvements that are identified by CDOT reviews. So that includes a XL and a decel lane and some other improvements as well. Those will be further designed and considered through the preliminary plat process. But at least now there's adequate information and staff feels comfortable with where it's at with CDOT in understanding what those improvements will be. Parking, nothing has changed on parking. There is, with the addition of the ADUs, additional parking spaces required, off-street parking, and there appears to be adequate space to provide that. Those will have to be reviewed during the time of building permit. Moving on to the utilities, we do have a few updates here. So the update here is that the development team did provide cost estimate for 2 alignments of the sewer system. One down Terrace Drive to Highway 550, another that you can kind of see to the image there on the right. And that image on the right was a staff generated layout. And the estimates are somewhere between 1.3 and 1.7 million to extend. Excuse me. And based on a per lot cost and some other analysis that staff did, we've kind of concluded that at this point, the sewer connection does not appears to be feasible. And so because of that, we are recommending the condition be added that the extension of the town sanitary sewer system be further explored with the preliminary plat and essentially be the primary wastewater connection rather than OWTS. Oh, I missed this one. Water. Sorry, I went backwards there. So the water system, additional information has been provided on the horizontal design as requested, this latest submittal. At this point, with the information that's being submitted, you can see this is the alignment connecting the proposed development to the existing water tank on the bottom right of that image. Staff feels comfortable that there's enough information to warrant moving forward. Of course, additional information, engineering, designing, and modeling will need to be required and reviewed through the preliminary plat process. But for sketch plan at this time, that information seems to be adequate. We already talked about that. So there in the staff report, you can see the of many individuals who have commented throughout the process. For this particular application or this hearing, we've received 6 comments that we've included in the staff report. After the staff report was sent to the planning commission, 4 additional were provided or received, and we added those to Dropbox as late adds. So those have all been provided to the planning commission for consideration as well. So with all of that, based on the review, based on the analysis, staff recommends that the planning commission approve Forwin's sketch plan with the following 3 conditions. 1, that a year-round secondary emergency access be provided as an alternative to the single access point onto Highway 550. 2, the development shall pursue alternative alignments and strategies to connect the proposed 4-wind subdivision to the town sanitary sewer system to be evaluated and considered in conjunction with the submission of the preliminary plat for the subdivision. And 3, that the building envelopes for all lots within 4-wind subdivision be amended to be a maximum of 10,000 square feet. So with that, I do have a recommended condition motion as well as some alternatives. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission might have. And I do know the applicant and development team are here to give a presentation as well.
Thanks, TJ. Do you guys have a question? Any questions on this yet?
I have a question, on the proposed sewer line alignment that we see in our staff report, is that something that we're proposing or they're proposing?
That alignment was generated by staff and saying, trying to give some direction on where we thought maybe it could go.
And it seems it's much different than the mall access that we talked about earlier. Correct, off of Mall Road or off the county. It's a different access,
Are you mixing up the road accesses and the sewer system?
the sewer system.
This one?
Yeah, that was proposed by staff, you said?
Yeah, it was some alignments that we just put together along property lines, yeah.
And that's different than the one we talked about coming from the county yard earlier on. Right? We talked
Yes, yes.
that the one from the county is no longer feasible.
No, it's not that I'm assuming, is that the one, is that the original one kind of?
Yeah.
Up north,
Right, one,
coming down 550?
no, I thought they had one that was connecting to the county shop. That we had proposed to coming over from the county shop and going through a 10-foot easement.
I guess what I would say is, we're not necessarily proposing anything specific at the moment.
Okay.
We want, what we've done with, the analysis that we've done so far is that we've determined that it's probably not infeasible at this point. So that's why we want to explore other opportunities. There might be some others, and that might be one as well.
Nothing yet.
Am I right?
Good.
Is Jennifer asking anything?
I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
With that, I'll invite the developer up to speak.
Hi, good evening, Chris Hawkins with Alpine Planning. First off, thanks for the special meeting. I know you guys have been meeting a lot and appreciate all the time that has been gone into this. So I'll share my screen. We just want to go back a little bit and just talk about the project from a perspective of what was viewed on this property before. Subdivision regs haven't changed a lot, but in the past, there was some clear direction given on this property. And it was a memo that's in the file. It's been in your staff packet as well too. And it basically provided a summary of infrastructure and land use considerations that would be considered at the development of the property that we've had in front of you now for several months. The first one was zoning and density. We know this has been discussed a lot. It wasn't raised as an issue in this meeting by staff. But at least at that time, it was looked at just strictly for zoning as 10,000 square foot lots. Now the zoning regulations allow for 6,000 square foot lots. So even a higher density than was envisioned in 2006, and we're proposing basically lot sizes that are about 7 times larger than what's allowed by zoning. As far as highway access, it was noted that the development of the McChesney subdivision in additional lots would require highway improvements, and now we're going to provide those. So we'll kind of check that box. As far as this was another thing in there that said, it was kind of an interesting comment that just said why the obligation to improve the highway intersection will be triggered by new development. It's quite possible and equitable that the cost of the subdivision improvements be borne by all residents of the subdivision. I know that would go over like a lead balloon, proposing that, and we're not. It's being paid for by the developer. Secondary access, this is straight out of this memo. With regard to access in general, there have been several discussions regarding options for secondary access to Vista Terrace community from a nearby and adjoining Ridgway USA development. Even if that access can be developed, it would be a supplement rather than a replacement for existing highway access via Vista Terrace Drive. For planning purposes, the Vista Terrace access should be considered the only viable route at this time, and we believe that to still be true. Pavement and street improvements, again, it talked about paved roads, sidewalks, stormwater retention. We believe would have been endorsed for gravel roads. We're providing a sidewalk and stormwater will be provided, so that box has been checked as well. Water capacity, in 2006, town has confirmed that basically there's water then and there's water now, even through the recent water study. So again, that box has been checked. Wastewater, we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about this tonight, but it said existing homes in Vista Terrace subdivision used existing sewer. The town council would have to approve additional subdivision based on such a treatment scenario, since connection to the town's centralized wastewater treatment is a requirement of subdivision. Extension of sewer infrastructure to the property could likely be accomplished with existing easements and right-of-ways, which we're going to show you is not correct, but at considerable cost, since the closest manhole is in neighboring Ridgway Village. We are going to talk to you about cost as well. They do acknowledge that the utility easements in Vista Terrace are narrow and not designed to facilitate sewer extensions. You actually need 20 feet for a sewer line, and the biggest is 15 feet. Again, this is again in wastewater. If the town was to approve septic systems, minimum lot size would need to be large enough to ensure room for those systems. And so we've met that requirement too. So now into the conditions, and we're just going to talk about the conditions tonight because we're glad to be at this point to just be talking about these conditions. We're going to recant the history a little bit because it's important. The annexation or rezoning of this was approved in 1981 for all 160 acres out there. And that included the Endicott property, lot 1 and 2, and of the McChesney subdivision, as well as Vista Terrace. And the town approved the Vista Terrace Filing 1 subdivision in 1982 with specific plans that clearly showed a cul-de-sac community. There's nothing on this sketch plan but cul-de-sacs, and that's it. And physically, that was what it was approved as the street system at that point in time. This is more of a detailed plot that shows Vista Terrace Filing 1 and the subsequent, what they said was phase 2, which is the Endicott property that was never filed. So the town approved McChesney subdivision in 1998, and all these approvals were based on a cul-de-sac subdivision as shown. There is no way today to provide a year-round secondary access based on the past town approvals. It's just not possible to do it today. So the town also approved this plat, knowing there's no way to provide for year-round access. We can't undo those past approvals. We're just simply doing what we have there overall. Four Winds has provided a 3-season access. Basically, that's going to be good 8 months of the year, March through November. And that's an as-is access. It's a dirt road that you can drive out on, basically in the event of an emergency. The Endicott estate has made it clear to us that year-round access is out of the question and will not amend the current easement to allow for snow plowing and widening. Year-round access requires roads to be built to town standards, 24-foot widths, certain pavement or gravel bases, et cetera. That's just not going to be possible in here. And the cost for that would be extraordinary. We're not even talking about that cost because it's just already super high for the other stuff. Requiring a new emergency access to be year-round is also not economically viable due to extreme cost. Even the town engineer and current engineer provided comments on the subdivision indicated Terrace Drive is the only viable route, and that was from a 2006 memorandum. The town approved River Sage, and again, this is a similar subdivision, without any secondary emergency access for the public. That emergency access out there is for emergency vehicles only. That's it. So we're not getting the same treatment here at all for this being required to provide the access. We can't go back on prior approvals and require conformance with a new regulation to a non-conforming situation where it's not simply possible to do that. And you approved, the town approved, and it's a succession, this development out there. And I know it's not perfect. The application of conditional increase evaluates subdivision approval because year-round access is not possible or feasible given the past town approvals. And also requiring year-round access for this project and not for River Sage really seems to be inconsistent. The current Terrace Drive access is also not located in a forest with, like everyone envisions, you need this great emergency access to get out in the wildfire. I think that's what's in everyone's mind. We have that route going out the other way. And so this road today, there's no big trees on it, can provide emergency access. If there's a vehicle blocking and they're not trying to extract people out of it, those simply push the vehicles out of the way. We can also create a tree-free zone if needed, keep them back from the road, just to make sure that this is kept more open along the road. And it's just grasses and the trees are pretty far away. I think everyone's pretty familiar with what's out there. And again, if we're only talking about emergencies in the summer months, what are the emergencies that are out there? And it's really, you know, the only one that we can think of is wildfire if the road gets blocked. And if the road gets blocked in an emergency situation, if fire trucks are going to pull them out, if they're extracting people, people are just going to have to wait. It's just simply the way that was approved. We are respectfully requesting the elimination of condition number 1 as drafted since we cannot meet this condition. It's physically impossible to provide it. And also please consider the benefits of an easement that has been presented and negotiated. And I just want to reiterate, this is not a new subdivision street system. This is an annexed area that was approved with a very specific road plan back in the 1980s. So trying to get secondary access out of this is impossible. Condition 2, the development, again, you have that conditions on the sewer. Again, it's not economically feasible. We appreciate TJ thinking it is, but you have to look at all the subdivision costs when you're looking at feasibility. The town has approved the use of septic systems overall, and actually, as you'll see in this, has agreed to provide sewer out, or to be the lead in providing sewer out to this area. The area of the Foreman subdivision is still subject to the water sewer agreement that was signed by the town and the developers in 1981. This clause I have up here is talking about a developer making a payment of $10,000. And then if it's not hooked up, then you get it back. And the next one, this is again, still a valid agreement that's in place. The town has no present plans to extend the sewer main to the developer's property. And that includes what we're subdividing today. And development of town sewer is presently unfeasible. Developers may utilize individual sewage disposal systems subject to applicable state regulations and Uray County regulations. Whenever a town sewer main is installed within 400 feet of any individual building on developer's property, such building, upon request by the town, shall be connected to the sewer line, and the owner of the building shall pay any connection and tap fees and other costs as required by applicable town ordinances. This is a commitment by the town that is still effective today. And our attorneys looked at this. This has not been replaced or superseded. This was carried out over time. And so there's still no plans to extend sewer to the area. We basically, it binds the town to extend sewer to the area, and then people connect in. Condition number 2 violates this currently effective water and sewer agreement. The town embodied the water and sewer agreement into the plat notes for Vista Terrace Filing 1, which requires individual owners to hook up to the sewer system when it's extended. I'm not going to read that. And it also required it for McChesney subdivision filing number 2. So both these subdivisions are following the footsteps of the currently valid water and sewer agreement. And likewise, we understand this subdivision will have to have a similar clause in it, and people will have to hook up to the sewer when it comes out. The plat note, we believe, constitutes a vested property right to septic systems, and the 2006 file confirms that it would have to be done at considerable cost. A sewer route through Vista Terrace Filing 1 is not possible due to small easement widths. They just don't exist. The biggest one's 15 feet and you need 20 feet. You also can't go and try to purchase an easement from the property owners out there because they put a restriction in their declaration that restricts any new easements from being established on the property. So it's physically impossible to get an easement through there by us for that to occur. Town staff supported a septic system in the August 30th, 2022 staff memo. This is a quote right out of it where it was supported. And we just don't know what's changed because this was the position on August 30th, 2022. In addition, a town attorney memo dated November 5th, 2021 talked about the McChesney plat requirement that home sites do not tie into the town sewer system but are responsible for obtaining septic permits. Again, this is just a statement of what was in effect at the time, but it's clear that everyone understood that there was septic notes on the plats. Buckhorn Engineering, Dan's going to go through the next series of slides. Dan, you're going to have to speak into the mic too. I'll change slides and height.
Thank you, Dan Quigley with Buckhorn Engineering. So I had done an OWTS feasibility study at the request of town staff last fall. We went out and dug test pits out there, and that's in your packet as well. But basically, looking at 4 different sites within the area as representative of the ability for the area to accept septic systems, and that's just kind of a summary of that. So Chris had already mentioned, some of the routes that we looked at. We've actually looked at more than 2, but town staff had proposed the one shown earlier, and then we looked at a couple others through there. Again, all of them require the use of easements that we feel are unable to be obtained from the homeowners up there due to the previous plat notes that Chris mentioned, and at a cost of somewhere between 1.3 and $1.7 million. So when you break that down to a lot cost of 20 lots, comes out somewhere in the order of $65,000 to $85,000 per lot. Whereas its town had done some studies as well, indicating that an average septic system around here at this time is probably on the order of $30,000 to $35,000 a lot. Again, excuse me, quite a bit of difference between those two. Physically, to get from the proposed subdivision, the 401 subdivision, down to the connection point that was shown earlier on the exhibit that town that TJ presented, you're going to need a lift station in any of those scenarios, any of the scenarios that I've looked at there. So that's obviously not only an additional cost to the project, but it becomes then something that the town staff has an obligation to own and maintain. And in my experience in the area here, that most municipalities would rather not own a lift station. Montrose, where I'm from, the city of Montrose has actually actively done lift station elimination projects twice now to get rid of existing residences out of their system, so the town staff or city staff in that case doesn't have to deal with them. Again, Chris mentioned the easements that are required for not only constructing the sanitary sewer system to the town standards, but also just maintaining them and having access to them. A 15-foot wide easement is nowhere near enough in that terrain to be able to try and put sewer deep enough.
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
So just also 2 lift stations, it just increases your carbon footprint. They're not a good idea. In the end, the water and sewer agreement clearly has the town taking the lead on this. The subdivision improvements, again, if you look at total costs We're at about $2 million now, not including sewer line. Or the $500,000 for housing or soft costs, which are adding up, or land costs. The additional 1.3, $1.7 million gets you up to about $4 million for a 20 lot subdivision, which is very high. And it's over that because obviously the land costs and other costs. And so basically, if you look at the application of that, these lots would have to be so far priced, no one would even buy them because they're way out of the Ridgway market. It's going to drive up lot prices, housing prices across the board. And again, in the end, these conditions are just going to create a valueless subdivision approval because they're impossible to meet and they're infeasible due to the economics of it. So we're just asking you to also consider eliminating conditions 2 and 3. I did add a quick note on here for ADUs, because we have to go to such great expense for this highway intersection. We thought, why not add them back in, because the town has been historically promoting these. And if the town wants these in, we'll add them in. If you don't want them, we won't have them here. But we felt that they were being pressed enough in other areas, and they do provide some level of housing. We could put them out there if they're desired by the town. We don't want that to be a make or break thing, but they are being added back in. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David Reed for some comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Good evening, David Reed, Dufferin Waldeck Law. I'm going to be very brief this evening, but I do want to talk about the conditions with a little more emphasis on the meaning of the conditions and the outcome of the conditions. Chris covered why we don't think the conditions are valid and appropriate under the circumstances. We appreciate staff's time spent in studying this and coming up with the conditions, but we do disagree with the recommendations of the conditions that they laid out before you. I think it's important to remember that there's really 2 ways to deny an application. One is to simply deny it. The other is to impose conditions that are so difficult to meet that it makes it impossible to meet them and thus effectively denies the project. And I believe that's kind of what we're faced with here tonight, considering these conditions. And if the commission was to impose them, it would make this development impossible. So it is an effective denial. A lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money has been spent by this developer to answer the questions that staff has had, legitimate questions that they were entitled to have the answers to. And I think we've provided them in a satisfactory manner. And I believe that we have done our best to ascertain the feasibility of this subdivision with any more conditions imposed on it, including these conditions. And it simply will not happen. That is the approval with these conditions. So I just simply urge you to really consider that there is no basis for these conditions and to approve this without them. Thank you.
Thank you for having us here tonight. Appreciate the opportunity. I think I'd like to reserve my comments and summations until after public comment, if that would be okay with the chair. If I could just sum up after the public comments, is that acceptable?
Madam Chair, there is an opportunity for the applicant to respond to public comments at that time. So I think
That works.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do the commissioners have any questions for the applicant?
This time.
I got a question. Christine, have any idea what these lots are going to be priced at?
I don't.
Jack, you speak in the microphone. Yeah, a price target or
It's hard to price without understanding the total cost. Sorry.
I'm assuming you priced it with what you're proposing, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a moving target with the prices. Tim's the expert. I mean, I honestly don't know until we get the final cost, but 400, 450.
And that's with septics, on-site septics.
So, hopefully that's-
Bill? Jennifer?
I guess I do have a question for the applicant. I was just wondering, how many projects like this have you done in the past? Have you built projects like this before?
That's
What you're proposing tonight?
My entire staff has done dozens. I have not done any. I'm in the school bus business. I've never done a development in my life.
Just speaking on behalf of the applicant, I've reviewed literally hundreds of subdivisions like this, managed overseeing them being built for government in the end, and have full confidence that it's fairly straightforward to build a rural subdivision like this.
Thank you.
I guess that's it. We don't have any further questions. Do you guys want to address anything before I open it to public comment?
I have a question for staff.
Go ahead.
I have a question for staff. You, TJ, you had said earlier that we're not requiring affordable housing in this. So is that because we asked for it, we don't really require it, or I was confused by that?
Staff did not request that. It was offered by the applicant.
Okay.
And there is no requirement for it.
Did you understand that, Jack? We don't have inclusionary zoning.
I have a question for staff as well. And I think this is more for Preston. Are we as well removing lift stations? Was it our plan to remove the lift station down here by Ridgway, USA? Or is that something that's changed?
Jennifer, all that's been presented at this point are concepts. We haven't evaluated the lift station component, so I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
That's what I mean, if you're talking about whether or not lift stations have to be removed as part of this.
No, my question was, I thought that there has been discussion going towards removing lift stations and going towards a different way of doing our wastewater. So I wanted to know if that's how the town is moving, or if it's still open that we would have the lift stations.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying. The town doesn't have a definitive plan on that, although it certainly would be nice to veer away from that, just as Dan was saying, the city of Montrose is doing. So yeah, it's certainly something the town would like to pursue at some point, but we don't have a definitive like vision or plan in place.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from staff or the commissioners? As I prepare to open this for public comment, I would like to remind everyone of the civility that I read at the beginning. Also that we're very aware of the issues that the public perceives with this project. We've had lots of letters entered into the record and we're aware of those things. We ask, as TJ mentioned, that we limit the public comment to possibly new issues that haven't already been pointed out. And I'm also going to limit people to 3 minutes on this, so we're not here the entire night. And I'm asking John to be my timekeeper if he's willing on that. So if you have a new public comment and wish to step up to the podium, you'll state your name and address. And we'll have 3 minutes to, thank you, to speak.
And that's what you're going to hear when you're trying to.
Why? I don't have a letter in this, you can pass this down. Between you. It's gonna take me 3.5 minutes. My husband is here, and he'll give me his time. Is that okay? Or I can have him come up and finish the,
I really need to keep it to 3 minutes or else there was no point in saying that.
well, can my husband come up and then talk for 30 seconds when I'm done?
Sure.
Okay.
You ready? Jennifer, here's your copy.
Yes. Hi, planning commissioners. My name is Jennifer Cram and I live at 260 South Laura Street in Ridgway. I do not live in Vista Terrace, but I have attended on Zoom every single one of the planning commission meetings that discuss the Four Winds development. I believe the sketch plan should be denied. The planning commission has pushed back on many issues in past meetings, and the developers made some concessions, but at this point, they seem like they're throwing things back in. I think that the bigger issue is that people are realizing that the previous Vista Terrace development has problems and maybe never should have been approved in the first place. A lot of things have changed in the last 40 years. If we were starting all over, would you approve that development? We can't get rid of what's there, but let's not make the problem worse. That development does infringe on winter elk habitat. I think that most of us moved here because of the landscape and the wildlife. We have to stop pushing the wildlife out of their lands and even more development up their will, no matter how many restrictions there are in terms of fences and dogs. That development has only one highway access and it is up on a hill away from the rest of the town and dangerous. Fire danger is a recent revelation for all of us. We can't add to the very real problem up there with only one exit. Vista Terrace is not pedestrian friendly with the rest of the town. What kind of town do we want? Do we put that there now? Do we want to add to it? We are all now more aware of affordable housing. That means a mix of multifamily and single family homes. ADUs are not going to solve Ridgway's housing crisis. Vista Terrace and Four Winds are not in any way affordable housing, and the proposed development would just add more multi-million-dollar homes. That's not what our community needs now. The developer talks in the sketch plan about how their proposal is clustered, green, and sustainable. That is ludicrous. What Ridgway really needs is more truly clustered housing, like that in the main part of town and in River Park, and it needs to be placed where people can walk to schools and stores and restaurants and the post office. Vista Terrace is not like that, and Four Winds won't be either.
30 seconds.
I'm gonna give the rest to my husband.
Okay.
Just starting with that.
Okay. I realize that the Four Winds land is zoned as residential and future development, and there's a use by right question. I believe that we need to step back and think carefully about the priorities in zoning for the Four Winds property, as well as other similar areas on the zoning and future land use maps. As was discussed previously, Four Winds is outside the town's initial growth boundary. There are not explicit restrictions in the master plan for growth beyond the IGB, but the clear intention was to limit growth beyond that boundary. I think that you're in danger of making an irresponsible decision, both in terms of public safety and also how we want Ridgway to grow. Please respect the community vision and don't set precedent that will lead to more proposals like this. You don't have to decide this tonight. We can continue the meeting and you can have an executive session to discuss options. Thanks to you all for your service.
Can you please state your name and address? I didn't want to interrupt you at the beginning.
I'm Paul Price. My address is 260 South Aurora, Ridgway.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Steve McComb and I live at 290 Terrace Drive. I'm up here tonight to appeal to the Planning Commission once again to deny this application. The myriad of valid issues surrounding this unpopular project have been outlined in great detail by many people in past meetings and letters, so I won't go over them right here. Vista Terrace is a completely unique neighborhood outside of Ridgway's hub that should be regarded as a significant asset to the town. One that allows for a smooth transition from the denser town core to the vast open space of the surrounding ranching community. It needs to be preserved in its uniqueness, not ruined by a suburban style clustered subdivision that will be outlandish to its surroundings. I believe that the Vista Terrace neighborhood rising up in a united expression of disapproval should be a large red flag for the town's representatives. At every planning commission meeting associated with Four Winds over the last year, there's been a large outcry to the town in letters and attendance and speaking at the meetings. Our concerns are not centered on not wanting this land to be developed, i.e. the NIMBY mentality. They are based on very concrete issues heavily outlined to the town. So in summary, I have strong faith, people, that the Ridgway representatives have both the insight and authority to control this unbridled and illogical growth that will overtake not only Vista Terrace, but Ridgway as well. Thank you so much. Reject this application.
Dan Berlin, 550 Vista Drive. So kind of echoing on Steve's comments. I've heard feedback continuously through all the meetings. I've been at them all. Fewer lots. Here we are again, 20. The developer says they can't make money under that, but they magically find $500,000 to throw at affordable housing. When you go into Vista Terrace, it's wide open, it's spacious, it's rural feeling. They tout the green environmental impacts of the clustered dense housing right in the center of the property, which I get, that makes sense for a property that's right up against the town core. This is not. This is Vista Terrace, very rural feeling, going to county land. And you're all of a sudden, you're going to have 20 lots with 20 houses right in the center there. It's going to look ridiculous. It's going to completely destroy the look and feeling of Vista Terrace. And so I really, it's going to destroy our neighborhood, and again, we're not saying this land, we know this land's going to be developed, right? But the appropriate design for this kind of property is something like Dallas Meadows, 6 to 8 lots, 3 acres. That'd be a logical transition as opposed to 20 lots that are mostly 1 acres. All in this very centralized part of the property. It's going to look ridiculous, so please, I'm begging you, protect our neighborhood. We love it. There's a reason we put it there and not down in town. We don't want to be in town, and this is a town development up in a rural area. It just doesn't make sense.
My name is Joe Woodick and I live at 720 Lands End. I want to address some of the soils they're talking about doing a percolation test of the stability soils analysis. Well, the stability soils analysis wasn't done. They just did a perk test to see if the water would absorb into the land. If they propose the septic system up there, they have to have a soils to stability analysis. I call the USGS. Any property is considered a steep hillside after 15% grade. They, according to their stuff, the lot 4 reaches up into 30%. The other lots, I took a grade rod out there with a laser. They're still in the 20 to 25%. The other 4 are going up the hill. To allow that to go in without sewer, those lots need to be a minimum recommendation from the USGS from 2.75 to 4.4 acres. If you look at Steve McComb's lot and the tailings from that cutting into that property, the tailings, drive out there and look and climb to the top of that hill and look down and see what the cut is on that. That cut's almost 30 feet into that hillside. So would lot 4 and the other lots going up top. Right off the roadside, if you take your grade rod, you shoot it from the topographical map, you've got a 20-foot rise right off the road, right into the property. Once they cut that back in 20 feet, especially with an easement. If you go further back into the property where the build sites are, you're into that soil from the road height 55 feet. That destabilizes that hillside. USGS does not recommend that. I don't know where they're coming up with this information. It seems very disingenuous to me that they're hiding that type of information. If you're going to build on a lot that size, it needs to be, especially with septic, approximately 4 acres. Am I out of time?
You got a minute left.
Okay.
1 minute.
1 minute. When looking at the soils conditions and that and the egress and what they've offered and what they have done, when they said the last meeting that a Prius could drive on the road that was there, they said that they could drive a Prius on that. That was disingenuous. That was a lie. And I'm going, how do you trust somebody that does that? They've said, we're going to build a bridge over the highway, or we're going to go underneath it with a tunnel to have an egress for bicycles and foot traffic. Then all of a sudden they can't do it. We're going to give you 500 acres from an easement, and now they can't do that. I mean, there's been so much in what would you call it? Some unreliable information that's been given and been changed. But I would like to reiterate what's really important for me is the stability of that, and to put those properties and on the density that they have without a soil stability analysis. That's just insanity, and that should have been done before this was even proposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Joan Chismeyer. I'm at 445 Park Lane in Vista Terrace. I wanted to speak about some of the proposals and some things that I've been thinking about that have not been addressed yet. I know that I'm going to rescind that. One thing with regard to the Vista view in the master plan, keeping those corridor vistas is important. I know that was something that was written in the master plan, and coming in from the north to the south, some of those lots still would be problematic with the houses being about 2.5 stories in height. The proposed secondary egress from Vista Terrace, I did send some pictures. I don't know if we can't show those though. It just goes in the packet. Is that accurate?
They're in the packet, yes.
Okay, so there is one picture. I went up to the top of Mrs. Endicott's property. At the very top, there is a cul-de-sac there. They've just recently taken out a stump in the roundabout. But in walking that, I couldn't for a while figure out where the road was that they were referring to. And then I found it and I wrote on their Prius Road or something like that. And there's no way that my RAV4 would be able to get up that, whether it was summertime or wintertime. It's very, it's at best challenging a situation there. Plus, I don't think Mrs. Endicott, I don't know if Cheryl's thought this out, but with sending everybody up to the top of the hill, she's going to have a dickens of a time selling her mom's house at the top of the crest of the hill. It'll devalue it. The other thing is it's becoming a little bit more dangerous at times getting onto 550 with the additional traffic that we're starting to see increase over the years. And one thing I was going to mention is that with this new subdivision of 20 houses, if they have ADUs as well, that will increase our traffic, our cars from anywhere from 40 to 80.
30 seconds.
Huh?
You got 30 seconds.
Oh, bother, John. Okay. Okay. Fire mitigation is important. I talked to the fire department friends. They said that they would have to take a water truck to the reservoir to get water to bring it back to fight fires and to support the water. I've been told in the past, pick one house to save. And if they have problems, coming in to fight anyway, come on, bother.
Sorry.
Okay, fine.
Hello, I'm Anthony Egoff, 615 Terrace Drive. There was something that was mentioned earlier, and it hasn't been addressed. And my concern is that you're going to have a lot of runoff from that development. Where is it going to go? Has there been any proposal for a containment pond or something to do something with all of that runoff? That is in a basin, and there already is a sump there, which drains some of that, but runoff is going to be a lot greater with developing that land. The other thing I wanted to say was there is a lot of vegetation along the only way to get out of Vista Terrace. And if a fire develops down on the highway and comes up that ravine, there's no way people are going to be able to get out of that. I don't care how many bulldozers you have and how many cars you push to the side, it isn't going to work. And the town is going to be liable for approving this from the standpoint that they have approved the addition of 20 or 40 or 50 more vehicles trying to get out of there. It's just not going to work. Thank you.
Any additional public comment?
Go. Oh, no, yeah, let's see, we'll try to do this and try to be political and nice. Try to follow my thoughts here. Clinton Estes, 833 Clinton Street, Ridgway, Colorado, 81432. So I'd like to start by looking at you guys because it's totally overlooked. As a builder here, I know you guys have the skills to do your job. And I think it's pretty brave. You sit up here knowing that like all of this going on.
You need to address the.
All of this going on. Okay, well, you know, I'm trying to commend these guys and one little note I made for myself. Just want to make sure you guys have all heard about the mountain lion that got loaded up in the DOW the other day. That's right at Vista Terrace turn. I called the sheriff to talk with him about it right after I saw it hit. There's the wildlife corridor seems to be going off the charts. And when a mountain lion gets hit at Vista Terrace, chasing a kill across the road, DOW takes it away. I think that qualifies as a wildlife corridor. The staff recommendation of the permanent road. Man, you win some, you lose some. It's kind of a like seemingly a no-brainer to have this permanent secondary access. Like I like project killer or not, it really doesn't matter. And for you guys to say require that, great, good job. Let's see, turning lane expense. I didn't really hear that totally readdressed as to who would be paying for the highway expansion and turning lane if commission decides to approve the sketch plan without staff's recommendations.
About a minute left.
1 minute. All right, $2 million budget. Personally, I think it's a little low. Current projections, being a builder here for a long time. What happens when that $2 million budget is $4 million and there's project abandonment possibility? Just insight. I got a thing here right within the developer's proposal. Conformance with master plan, page 70, density. The master plan envisions, Town of Ridgway master plan envisions lot 2 and parcel A of rural neighborhood as a rural neighborhood with a maximum density of 0.121 dwelling per unit acre that translates to a density range of 4 to 43 acres. They tout only occupying 53% of the density range. Density range of 4 to 43 acres. That's in your court, right? That's what it sounds like to me. So, thank you.
Hello, my name is David Berger, and I'm at 651 Terrace Drive.
Speak a little bit.
I was in Vietnam for the US Navy, and the Navy used to have a saying that goes, tradition is good ballast, but not necessarily good cargo. So I want to thank the presenters tonight for reminding us of the tradition 40 years ago that probably needs to be refigured. We need new laws to cover these things because those clearly aren't adequate. It'd be nice to depend on the old days, but they're gone. So I do thank you guys for bringing that up so that the committee can start reviewing these kind of laws and making them appropriate for the current time. Second thing I want to say is thank you for your 3 points. I'm sorry that it wasn't 10. Things like the bridge or the tunnel for wildlife. I think they should build a wildlife, a deer fence as well. We've had enough kills on the road already. I actually think the highway problem would be solved with a stoplight. I think most of all, what I'm saying is the habit of overpopulation is killing us. I don't think we need to continue down a stupid road for somebody's profit. It's going to ruin the quality of this community. And that's ought to be unacceptable. So thanks.
Hello, Council. My name is Herb McCarg, and I'm the attorney for Four Winds Ranch 1 LLP and Bernadine Endicott, the owner of the property that is involved in this potential development. One thing I just wanted to address is the secondary emergency access easement. Obviously, that requires an easement across my client's property, and that easement has been, heavily negotiated with the developer and the proponent of the project. And I have to say that, by making that a condition of approval, it is an effective denial because Miss Endicott and Four Winds Ranch 1 LLP will not expand the easement to year-round access. And so, by the town making that a requirement, it's infeasible, as Mr. Hawkins was presenting, that there are no other routes. There's no other year-round emergency access. So the town is effectively imposing on the developer a condition that cannot be met and would result in an effective denial of this application. So I think, the town should consider that with, deeply when making their determination here. And also the other aspects of the development, certainly in order for the development to move forward, the developer is under contract with Four Winds Ranch number 1 LLP and Miss Endicott for a portion of the property. And it's certainly causing constraints on that contract to move forward. So thank you. I appreciate all the time and effort you put into this.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Sokolowski. I'm the Executive Director of the Home Trust of Ridgway County. As you know, I live at 95 Meadows Circle in Ridgway. I would like to actually just address what was in the newspaper, the suggested $500,000 contribution to affordable housing. I would like to encourage the Planning Commission and Town Council to encourage Mr. Faust to make that contribution regardless of the outcome, regardless of your decisions. If Mr. Faust has the means to make such a generous donation and invest in his community in that way, it is an investment in teachers and children and local businesses. in so many things in our community, and I would encourage him to make that investment regardless of the decision of the planning commission and the town council. Thanks.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Anyone on Zoom? I didn't forget you. This time. Looks like no.
If you don't know how to raise your hand, feel free to just unmute yourself and identify yourself and give your comments.
I will close public comment.
The ultimate stare down. Looking for something. I think now might be a good time to ask the applicant if they want to respond to the public comment.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to respond to any of the public comments?
Yes, please, I'd like to give a summation. And what I can have Dan speak on.
Just real quick, address one of the comments before. Dan quickly again with Buckhorn Engineering. So we did a feasibility study for the septic on the property. We did not do any percolation testing by regulation 43, which is the CDPHE regulation for on-site wastewater treatment systems. We did a visual tactile observation of test pits down to 8 feet for refusal in bedrock, which is standard practice. You do not typically do any kind of stability analysis for a septic system. It's not required by the state under regulation 43 or by Erie County, who has adopted regulation 43. And the minimum size acreage in Erie County, regardless of slopes, is 1 acre. So those have been met here on this particular site. Thank you.
Eric Faust, 7631 County Road 5, Ridgway. Appreciate everybody's efforts here, including the Vista Terrace residents. It's definitely made our proposal much better. Appreciate the Planning Commission's time and energy through all we've gone through. I'd like to finalize my summation here in 3 parts. I guess I'll talk about the 2 conditions, sewer and secondary emergency egress, as well as a summation of Ridgway benefits, which I'm pretty passionate about. We provided a feasibility study per town staff request. The sewer is not feasible in any way, shape, or form. Kills the project. It requires sewer. We can't pursue it. Our engineers' costs before the land are $1.8 million. That's for electric, road, water, internet. That's 1.8 million before the sewer. What I want you to understand about the sewer, Planning Commission members, is when town staff evaluated it, they evaluated a proportional cost change from what would cost $35,000 being paid by the purchaser of the lot. So that's a financial burden borne by the person who buys the lot. The $1.8 million forecast, and we have no idea whether that's even close. If we had the easements, that would be borne entirely by our development. So we would pay 1.8 million on top of the 1.8 million in our engineers' cost for the infrastructure that I just spoke about. And that doesn't include that doesn't include the soft costs. It doesn't include the purchase of the land, the emergency egress. So it's economically impossible to in any way pursue sewer or have that as a condition of our approval. We can't do it. The notification that Chris included in his presentation speaks of a special improvement district or a GID, which incidentally can be approved by town council individually, but the town would be taking the lead on those issues. We cannot. The thing that astounds me is I want you to think about this conceptually. Vista Terrace, River Sage, And even the Uray County Roads and Bridge and the Land Development Office, that has a septic tank. All the lots in Vista Terrace are on septic. River Sage, which went forward in 2016, is all on septic. I can't bring sewer from the manhole down in the Ridgway, USA, or wherever we would start, and bring it up past all through surrounding communities and bring it to Four Winds. It's conceptually impossible, and it renders the project impossible. The easements are another huge issue. To conditionally request us to pursue sewer, you need at least a 20-foot easement and probably 30-foot. And our engineer went through 4 different scenarios. We can't, unless the town were to condemn property, we can't get easements through Vista Terrace. Their covenants don't allow it. CDOT, highly unlikely. It would take years to negotiate to come up Mall Road if it was even achievable, which it's not. The plat notes for McChesney too allow for septic. That's what one of the key issues that we started with the town attorney with. They're clear. We have a vested right on this property to put septic tanks there. We're certainly willing, as a covenant of development, to hook up if the town gets into a position where they can bring the lateral over. We're also willing to participate in a general improvement district or a special improvement district, but we cannot spend $1.8 million just on sewer. The economics don't work, and you have to appreciate the economics. If the money's not there in the project, we can't pay for all these requirements that the town is imposing. The current water agreement that Chris alluded to allows for septic. It gives us the vested right. The current agreement that's in place for Vista Terrace and McChesney too allows for septic. That has to be recognized. The engineer's soil study clearly provides for septic. The soils work. They're not only good, they're exceptional. Here's one that I can't wrap my head around, and this is problematic in many ways. The town staff recommended approval at our August 22 meeting with septic. What changed? Why is that? Why are we even talking about sewer? It's reneged upon from our initial meeting on record. Colorado law, another key, allows septic on our lots, the size of our lots and our density. It provides for septic. As a side note, the imposition, the condition of sewer, Vista Terrace, by their own covenants, will incur costs to hook up the sewer. They will have to hook up, and they will pay those connection fees, tap fees. I guess I've made my point on sewer versus septic. Secondary emergency egress. This is something, and I really appreciate Herb McCarg Esquire for coming up on behalf of Cheryl Endicott. We went through extensive negotiations to solve that problem. I would just offer to you that, what was it, 82 that Vista Terrace went in. It's been in for 41 years. No one solved the problem of emergency egress. It's been brought up through many administrations. I know the care that the town, this commission, the town council, I was given 1 year to solve everybody's problems. I solved an issue for emergency egress for Vista. I negotiated emergency egress for 8 months of the year, which was never brought up about year round. That was brought in subsequently afterwards. We have, that's an unbelievable public benefit that I want to be, please consider, and the merits of it. It takes the problem away from the highway. If there's congestion, if there's police action, whatever's going on, taking the problem to the east makes total sense. It's the way any designer, any planner would route emergency egress. It's available, it's in place, it's something that should be seriously considered as solving a major public problem, and it's available not only for our plan, but for Vista Terrace. I can't overemphasize, it's a viable solution. We're asking for advancement of our plan with viable solutions that solve problems. Last thing I'm going to run through here is some of the benefits that I penciled down. Our plan, whether people want to identify it or not, is within the town of Ridgway, the 1.8 square miles of valuable town land that's left. There's no other lots for us to pursue to do a project like this. Suggestions have been made to do it somewhere else. There aren't any other 43-acre lots where we can do this. It's a low density plan with 13 acres of open space. We're providing a sustainable green community. That's something that I'm passionate about, that I mentioned from day one. There's going to be a solar power requirement, 70% minimum solar power will be required in every one of these homes. That's progressive and that's fantastic for Ridgway. Plus an EV plug-in in each home. The Highway 550 turning lane, I'm just going through the things that we're going to do. That'll be completely funded, just for clarification, by our project. That's a 40-year-old problem. Number two, being solved by this application. I'm glad to do it. I'm happy to do it. We're paying for that. And as far as the Endicott lot, with consideration, like Herb said, this traffic study pointed out that Vista Terrace should have never happened. And Commissioner Clark mentioned this as well. Under current conditions, certain things would have been changed drastically or it never would have happened. The traffic study pointed out that Vista Terrace should have never happened without a turning lane. There's still 11 lots in Vista Terrace that are unbuilt. Our turning lane takes care of that issue. Fire suppression for Vista Terrace is enhanced by our plan. We're going to have double the capacity to fight fire in the event that something goes on. That's a big deal. Our required engineering for water is going to enhance their fire suppression. Another thing that I'm passionate about is the $500,000 for affordable housing. Our plan doesn't address that, so this does. I want to do something for the community. It'll absolutely happen. And we have a crisis that needs to be funded. And I'd like to participate in being able to do that through the proceeds of this application and plan. The ADUs, as we talked about, we just feel it provides, we would do those long-term rental only, rent controlled through our covenants for Uray County residents and people who are employed in Uray County. If that's something that the Planning Commission deems unnecessary or not wanted, that's negotiable. We can take it out. Another issue that I would commit to that I came up with would be a $10,000 transfer tax, which is something I wish this commission would consider on any project in Four Winds. When a lot changes hands, there'll be a $10,000 required transfer tax earmarked, and it must go for affordable housing. It's another way to handle the issue and move forward. We're solving problems for Ridgway, and they're with viable solutions. Would definitely ask for these things to be considered, but what we cannot do is commit to any conditions that we can't agree on tonight, that we can't deliver. We can't be in limbo any further and be looking for things. We've addressed every issue you've tried to give us. Many conditions have been changed, goalposts have been changed, rules have been changed. We've tried to do exactly what's most professional to get this approved and do an outstanding plan. But we cannot do it with either sewer or year-round emergency egress with an extremely generous offer from the property owner that will go away and never come back, we can't do it if that's a requirement of our approval. I thank you very much for your time and all the energy on this proposal. And for the special meeting, thank you for your time.
We can't.
Sorry.
Since there was new.
No.
Public comment's been closed, sorry.
I was able to comment this now.
No, thank
Since there was new information.
Sorry. We'll take your comments and his comments and combine them too.
You back up here?
Yeah, Jack, you want to go?
I've got a question for staff. So I spent some time today reviewing the original Vista Terrace plat. So my question is to Bo or to TJ or to Preston. Open question, I guess. I'm sorry. In reviewing the plat, it appears that they're establishing SID for the original Vista Terrace plat. So is it anybody's interpretation that there's an existing special improvement district with this plat?
There's none.
I've got a lot to say, but I'm waiting to hear something else from somebody else.
Keep going.
Well, I just need to address the applicant here. It's not our responsibility to make this project financially feasible. That's never one of our concerns here. We're here. I'm a health, safety, welfare voter every time. I'm an ADU voter every time. So the financially feasible part of this project doesn't even enter into my decision-making process. You need to understand.
It's exactly what I have written down.
And I agree with John, and I agree with the applicant here that Vista Terrace should not have been approved 41 years ago, but I agree with for different reasons. I agree it should not have been approved because it didn't have two accesses, not because it didn't have a turn lane. The need for a turn lane has been created by Telluride and more traffic on the road. I think real estate or subdivision planning 101 says that after you have 10 units, you should have two accesses. I've been told that by more than one planner. So I think the whole Vista Terrace is flawed, not because of the turn lane, not because of the 550 access, because it doesn't have an access coming down to what I think it should come down to into Ridgway, USA. It should be a safe alternative year-round access. Not, I applaud you for getting the access, the 8-month or access that you have, because it's better than what we have now. So anything's better than nothing. So I don't want to diminish that effort, but I'm in favor of a different type of access that would come down to town, allow people to access town without going onto Highway 550 at Vista Terrace Drive and ride a bicycle down the hill and end up at the traffic signal here. Much different way to come to town. So the people from Vista Terrace came to town, they either came down through Bernadine's property or down through what I call the Percheron property or down through the Ridgway USA property, some type of connection there, and come to the market on a city street that is less congested than 60-mile-an-hour Highway 550. And I don't think that's your fault. I think the town has been flawed by not accomplishing that before this application. But I think that's what needs to be seen. That's what needs to happen here. So I'd like to hear what some of the other commission members have to say about those comments.
Well, as I said, I have down here, it's not.
Bill, can you, people can't hear very well, so.
As I interjected earlier, I have written down, it's not up to the town to make development economically feasible on every piece of property within the town limits. So.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah, I'm kind of second a lot of the comments that have already been made here. The other thing that I am concerned about is just, it's what a lot of the public comment has been about, and it's been one of the things I've had a concern with from the beginning is the density of this project. And the fact that it's in the IGB and that we're supposed to put more scrutiny on things out there. The UGB is where we should be developing those, although according to you, we don't have that space. And I'm not going to argue with you. But I don't see going into the IGB with the density of 20 houses as something that we need out there. And if we do need that, then I think we do need a secondary access. Again, we're inheriting something that was done 40 years ago. That doesn't mean it was right, it's what we have. And so we need to, if we want to pack this place up and take Vista Terrace and its 11 still remaining lots and throw in another 20 lots, there's got to be a secondary access. I don't know the right path to do that. I understand that through the Endicott property, it's not an option. I don't know what the options are, but I really think, we haven't had a problem in 40 years. Let's knock on wood for that. That's been a good deal. That doesn't mean we're not going to, especially with the rising climate change, the rising wildfires. That still needs to be addressed. The 20 houses, the density there, that's another concern I've got with the wildlife. You've seen the photos that have come through, not this, but the last thing where we had the wintering elk up there. The 20 units doesn't help that. I understand you've taken other provisions and met with CPW's guidelines on that. It's a concern to me. Those elk this is their natural pathway, the deer, and they need to have somewhere to be here. And again, we're looking at it with extra scrutiny because we're in the IGB, not the UGB. Seems like I had one other one, but we'll let somebody else step in.
I'd like to piggyback on Russ's comments, because they echo mine. I think, for one thing, I've said this before and I'll say it again. You guys, the applicant team has continually compared apples and oranges. That's to compare some of the subdivisions in town, like River Park and Solar Ranch, let alone Eagle Hill, which, or not Eagle Hill, River Sage, which actually has a very fully professionally developed emergency egress. To this, it's just not the same thing. It's not even close. And to claim that the 41-year-old agreements on this property somehow require us to allow whatever you want is just kind of ludicrous in my mind. It really is the 20 lots is just, I mean, there are 48 lots in the existing, 49, I guess, with the Macomb piece. And an additional 20 is what triggers all the concerns we have. It's too small an area to pack in 20 homes on septic on ground that has the slopes that it has, in my opinion. I think we've heard that from a number of people. You guys may disagree, but I think, and I'm not even going to get into the question about sewer. I understand that it's potentially not doable, but that someday, if this continues to develop up here, it's going to have to happen somehow. Increased easements, whatever it takes, it's going to happen because you just can't keep building more and more homes and having them all on septic on the kind of soils and on the slopes that we have here. And then again, the additional 20 homes into a subdivision that has totally inadequate access, emergency access right now, just makes it so that we have to have emergency access somehow. I would argue that even with today's water system up there, it's kind of
minimal. It's probably enough if there was a home fire or two, but I don't think in the past people thought about this new wildfire environment we live in now. And I don't think it's a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when, that we have a catastrophic wildfire come through here. And you just can't, even doubling the water system, it's not gonna be able to handle that. And then where do people go? Granted, we have that problem now, we have to figure it out. I'm sitting here thinking it's probably, this is pointing out to me as mayor that we probably need to have a conversation about condemning one of the lower lots so that we can create a road down into Ridgway, USA, that Jack talked about earlier.
Yes.
I think that's, regardless of what happens here tonight, I think that's something we probably need to put on our plate. Because it's very clear that we have a problem waiting to happen up there when it comes to fire. So those are my main concerns. I think I had some other comments too, but I'll let others weigh in.
I'm going to continue. Oh, you want to go?
Go ahead, I'm good.
I'm fine with the density. I'm fine with the septic. I think I compared the density today to the existing Vista Terrace plats, and I don't think they're that far apart. I'm okay with the hillsides. I'm just not okay without year-round secondary access. So I think to add that type of density on top of an access issue is a mistake for my vote. And again, what 1 acre density or over almost 2 acre density, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with the septics, but I'm not fine with adding 20 more units without a safety.
You don't have any concerns about the wildlife?
No.
Okay.
What I'm hearing is that the number one concern from the commission is density. I'm sorry, access. The thing I think we need to clarify is, are we talking about secondary access or emergency access? I'm hearing
Acceptable
Jen say
access.
secondary.
I mean, acceptable access that the town staff can get behind. I mean, I don't care if it's the same as River Sage where it's emergency access only. I would prefer to condemn a lot, the town to buy it, or we raise some money and buy it, and we come down, so there's a whole nother access. But I've also been told by friends of mine in Vista Terrace that they'll lay down in front of that bulldozer. So what do? I'm in favor of a different access altogether. I probably won't be popular.
I think it needs to be at the very least an emergency access.
Yeah.
I think that around. Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And similar to points that were brought up in previous meetings, it needs to have two-way access.
Two-way year-round.
So that people can be evacuating from the area, and fire trucks and emergency vehicles have an access point in. Because I think the last thing anybody on this commission wants is to have it on their head when a wildfire comes through in any of those areas, be it Vista Terrace or winds, that if somebody died, it's because we didn't provide that access. And again, like we talked before, the chance of a wildfire, as John said, is not going to be an if, it's going to be a when. Like just with the current change in climate change.
So again,
to the emergency egress.
let me finish summarizing
Let us
this.
finish.
So would you guys agree that the number one issue is secondary or emergency two-way year-round access?
I would call it secondary emergency access.
I agree with John on that.
Secondary emergency access?
I'd like year round. I'd like a road going.
It has to be year round.
Got it.
I'd like a paved road.
Two-way.
Now. Period.
I don't. I
Like
mean,
how TJ put it into the report, that it also includes going to Highway 550, because I don't agree with anything going to County Road 12.
I missed the first part where you said there, Jennifer, but what Jack and I have been talking about is a whole nother idea of sending it down into Ridgway, USA, but
Yes, and that's what I agree with, is that it does need to come down into Ridgway, USA, which would connect with 550 down here, the highway.
at this level.
So I'm so approach to seeing that infrastructure going down from Cimarron down into Red Cliff and going out the Hunter Way onto the highway. I'm not agreeable to building something out to County Road 12. So the way that
Well, the
TJ
developers already
worded
said
it,
that they can't do that. They can't build more than what's there, so that's just not an option. So that's not what they're arguing.
yeah, but to go back to what Michelle asked, is TJ had in the original report that the secondary emergency access would eventually go out onto 550.
Well, then you would achieve that by going down into
I
Ridgway.
think we're all saying the same thing.
Yes.
So I would say the second issue that I'm hearing here is density,
Yes.
not from Jack, but from everyone else.
Jennifer, we didn't give you a chance to weigh in. You can either comments or.
Yes, and I would like to make some comments. Sorry, I'm not there. I apologize for not being there and for being on Zoom. I have a serious back injury, and so I need to be here at home. But I'm happy. I would like to put out these points. So one of them was the road access, and that we all agree that it should come down into Ridgway, USA. The density at 20 homes is especially high for the sensitivity for the wildlife area. I guess I'm not understanding why the money wouldn't be put towards, well, for the density, I think that when you look at policy environment 1-2 and you talk about wildlife and open space corridors, endorsements, or other stuff to relieve for wildlife, that the map that is displayed on page 9 does not meet those requirements. It does not meet requirement policy GRO 15.5, which talks about how new development is compatible with surrounding area and neighborhoods. When you look up the density in Vista Terrace and Rivers Edge, it's about, I think I read 2.2 houses per acre. So we were talking about 1 house per acre on this property. And so that to me does not, is compatible with the surrounding area. What would be more compatible is the 2.2 houses, or the 1 house on 2.2 per acre, or as somebody suggested, 2.7 acres, or 2.7 acres for 1 house for the septic tanks. So that I think that's way important.
So another one who's concerned about density.
Yes.
So I think this is probably inappropriate to say this, but I'm gonna say it anyways. I think if this project is denied tonight, or if it's approved with requirements that make it unbuildable, I think this board should rezone this property so that we don't do this dance again. This is the second or third proposal we've had for this type of density on this property. So I think the town needs to step up and zone this for what it wants.
I agree.
But it's something we can't and shouldn't be dealing with tonight, but your point is made.
Told you it was inappropriate.
So far I have the access issue and I have density.
Yeah, and just as far as density goes, I've got 2 issues. One is wildlife. And I won't belabor that. The other is more of a visual density. The difference between these 20 clustered units as opposed to the more open areas that I would say at this point define Vista Terrace. There would be a distinct visual density difference.
Agreed. So, yeah, and I think the developer has continued to include the land that they're not using to try and make those numbers look better.
Correct.
But at the end of the day, it's not usable land. That's why it's not being used. So what we really need to be comparing to here, John said, not apples and oranges, but apples and apples, is look at that area that they're planning to develop, not the ones that they're not. When we're looking at those overall considerations of what the density is versus a Riverside or a Vista Terrace or what have you. Because I agree that it's the visual impact is quite a bit denser than what you would see here.
So I think Phil hit the nail on the head. I mean, I did some calculations on the original Vista Terrace plat, and it's approximately 91 acres with 46 lots. So average lot size is about 1.9 acres for the old 41-year-old plat. That's not a lot of difference between what they're proposing now. So, but their project's going to look a lot different. So the numbers aren't really different, but the visual impact is a lot different.
Correct.
Exactly.
That's it.
Those are the two main issues that I have. We obviously discussed other ones, but those are the main concerns.
I think we beat the horse.
Anything else you want me to?
Well, I hesitate to say anything, but I feel like it needs to be addressed. A lot of the commenters addressed it in their letters in opposition to this, and it's about the $500,000 affordable housing offer. And I have to say, it just seems strange. I don't really. It almost seems. It almost seems unseemly. Some of the letter writers used the B word, which I'm not going to use, but it just seems really odd to me, and I don't understand it.
Would you like the music to be on that?
Slow down. Just with the process here is we're deliberating. We can reopen public comment if we decide it's necessary, but just got to hear us out. I just think, with all the comments about how expensive this is going to be for you to develop and how much you can't do things because of how expensive it is, and you can't do less than 20 lots because it doesn't pencil out. But then you turn around and the 11th hour offer $500,000 towards affordable housing. Where's that coming from? And I'm not asking you, it's a rhetorical question. I'm not asking you to answer that question. I think it bears mentioning that it just seems like you're setting us up to look bad if we don't accept that, and that makes me really uncomfortable. So I just feel like I had to say that. I don't know if everybody agrees, but it hadn't been commented by anyone other than some of the letter writers, and I just think it's important.
I mean, I think I've heard what John said, and I've heard other people describe it with a word that John doesn't want to use, so I'm not going to use it. But I think that money could be used in a better way to get us access. And again, I'm all about access. I'm all about health, safety, welfare. So, TJ, can you put up the old Vista Terrace plat on the projection for me? Is that possible?
Lickety split.
Oh,
I mean, if you can't do it, it's fine.
keep saying what I want. I'll try to find
Is this germane to the pending application yet?
Yeah. Well, but I was just going to propose a use for that $500,000 and access.
I don't know that that's germane to the pending application.
I'll change the subject.
Yeah, I think the thing we have to be careful about is it's not our job to make development economically feasible. It's not our job to tell them how to spend their money.
I agree.
Part of the same question, or the same issue.
I've never turned down $500,000. Interesting spot.
Do we have any further comment? Different from the direction this is going?
I think we got it in the weeds pretty good.
We have a motion?
She said we have a motion.
I'm uncomfortable approving this thing with the conditions that are not achievable. I think if we, instead of approving it with conditions that are deal killers, I'd rather just deny it. That's just the way.
That's where I was headed.
I'm sorry, John.
That's where I was headed.
Okay, let's do it.
Well, I'll take a stab at it.
Through here. There's, you had a slide that had a motion there, motion to get it right.
I want to start out with an excerpt of the code that is on the first page of the staff report. See the first page. It's actually page 3, talking about 745A, the informal review and sketch plan. The final sentence is, the sketch plan shall be disapproved if it or the proposed improvements and required submittals are inadequate or do not comply with the requirements of these regulations. And toward that end, I would move that we deny the 4-wind sketch plan, finding that the following standards of the RMC are not met by the application materials. Number 1, that access is inadequate. Number 2, that protection of wildlife corridors is inadequate. And number 3, that due to the density of the proposal, the use of septic systems is inappropriate. I would entertain anyone who wanted to add anything, another condition to that. That's second.
So John made the motion to deny the application and Bill seconded it. Do we have any further discussion from the commission on that? Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Lisk.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Petroselli.
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tim Meyer.
Aye.
Mayor Clark.
Aye.
And Chairperson Montague.
Aye.
Oh.
Motion passes 5-1.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Excuse everybody else. Can you finish the meeting, please?
We're still meeting, we got it closed, so
We still have things.
Meeting is adjourned.
Hi, Jennifer, the only one. Okay.